Thank you, Caitlin. I started that Reese in the News things because with a very small list, my provincial people like that, who I always wanted to make sure that they saw what I had said before a bishop told them what I had said. And then the list kept getting bigger. I am with the National Catholic Reporter. I had so many people who came up. I had so many people who came up to me and said, you were with America Magazine. I was with America Magazine. That's another story. But now I'm part of the new church. I'm part of the new church where Father works for lay people. Dennis is my direct boss, and Caitlin is my super boss. So it's a new church where Father works for the laity. So and it's really very exciting. I love working for the National Catholic Reporter. One of the things when I was writing for America Magazine, I used to always kind of looking over my shoulder, worrying a little bit about, am I going to get the Jesuits in trouble? Dennis is perfectly happy when I get the NCR in trouble. No complaints, So anyway, it's a different kind of work. Anyway. Thank you all for coming. I've been asked to talk about a church of mercy, becoming a church of mercy, as one of the themes of Pope Francis's papacy. This whole theme of mercy. I don't know if you've seen those word clouds that you sometimes see in newspapers where journalists, they love computers. They put all the words that somebody's spoken into a computer, and then they create this cloud, and they have individual words, and the bigger the word, the more times it's been used. Well, mercy was the big word when people analyzed what Pope Francis had been talking about during his first year as Pope. And so we thought this would be a good thing to look at in terms of his papacy. I'm going to primarily focus on what he had to say in Evangelium Gaudium, is really his first major document. I'm going to look at God's mercy towards us, our mercy towards one another, becoming a church of mercy, and mercy in the poor. And then we'll have a few comments on the Synod and what the Synod might have or might not have said about mercy. First of all, this wonderful quote, which my boss stole from me, in his presentation. God never tires of forgiving. God never tires of forgiving us. We are the ones who tire of seeking his mercy. This is a line that really jumps out of his document, Evangelium Gaudium, the stress on mercy. Why is this important? It's important because our image of God is so important. I know I've done retreats with people, and I always ask them to think about, okay, how do you imagine God? Is God this judge who is going to, when you come the last judgment, he's going to say, well, you did this and this, and you did that, yeah. And is God the policeman that's chasing you all the time when you do bad things? What is our image of God? It's so important what that image is, because it has ramifications in our spiritual life, our prayer life, how we think about God, how we think about the Eucharist, how we think about church. All of it goes back to what is our image of God. And what Pope Francis is saying is that God is someone who never tires of forgiving us. It goes back, of course, to the parable of the prodigal father, we often call it the prodigal son, but scripture scholars often say, no, it's really the prodigal father. He's prodigal with his mercy. And we see throughout the Gospels that Jesus is always welcoming to the sinners. He eats with prostitutes and sinners. This is who Jesus was. And it's interesting, of course, this is, the Pharisees complained. Why is he eating with prostitutes and sinners? And it's also interesting, Jesus never gets mad at the sinners. Who's he get mad at? He gets mad at the Pharisees. Those are the people he gets mad at. He never gets mad at the sinners. So this is, and Jesus is our image of the Father. And so this is extremely important for how it orientates us in terms of our whole spiritual lives, our whole view of the church, our view of, what life is all about. And he goes on to talk about how God, with a tenderness which never disappoints, but is always capable of restoring our joy, he makes it possible for us to lift up our heads and start anew. This is what mercy does. And the words that Francis used, tenderness, restoring our joy. If when you go to confession, you don't come out smiling, the priest hasn't done his job. This is, there should be joy that comes in the forgiveness of sin, the experience of mercy. I used to always have a lot of trouble at Mass because, we'd start with all these joyful songs as we process sin. And then the priest gets up there and says, and now let's reflect on our sins. I mean, what a damper on the party, And then, of course, everybody, glory to God, let's all sing happily, it's like a roller coaster. You're up high, you're down low, you're up high, but what Francis is saying there is, okay, let's rejoice in the mercy that God has showered upon us. Lord, have mercy. That's, it's not something of sadness, but of joy. God's mercy is what salvation is all about. The salvation which God offers us is the work of His mercy. And it's a gift. It's not something we earn. And of course, this is straight Pauline theology. We don't save ourselves. This is the insight Luther had that had been lost for so long in the church. That we don't save ourselves with our good works. God saves us. And we respond to the love of God by doing good things. It's not, we're not buying our way into heaven with good works. We're experiencing God's mercy, and that mercy impels us to lives of love. And so this is very important in our whole image of, this is what keeps us from being Pharisees. Is realizing, okay, we don't earn heaven. We experience God's mercy, and that's how we are saved. God, by His sheer grace, draws us to Himself and makes us one with Him. This is His plan of salvation. This is His plan of creation, to draw us all to Himself and thus save us. So, now, Pope Francis, in the interview with the Jesuit publications, was asked by the interviewer, "Who are you? Who is Bergoglio?" And his response was, "I'm a sinner." Holy Father? Sinful Father? What, are we supposed to change your name now? We're going to call you Sinful Father. This is. I remember growing up. The only pope I ever knew growing up was Pius XII. We thought he floated off the ground. That was our image of this man. And his, he says, "Who am I? I'm a sinner. I'm just like everybody else." That's why, who am I to judge? On that T-shirt. I am a sinner. This is the most accurate definition. It's not a figure of speech, a literary genre. I am a sinner. Well, of course, us journalists want to know, what did he do? It doesn't really matter, but that core understanding is so important if we are going to accept the mercy of God. It's also recognizing ourselves as sinners. And of course, this is straight out of the spiritual exercises of St. Ignatius of Loyola. The first week of the exercises part of it is recognizing that we are sinners in need of God's mercy and forgiveness. But, I've done these spiritual exercises so many times, and I remember doing them in high school, where we only got the first week of the exercises. And it was all hell, fire, and brimstones, and, it was, basically the strategies would scare the hell out of them. They might be good for a week. This is not what he's about. The stress here is on joy, not on sorrow, not on fear. The stress is on the joy of being saved. Instead of God being a policeman who's, getting us, I just want to catch them. My job is, catch them in the act so we can arrest them. No. It's much more like a mother with a child who's just beginning to walk. Does the mother get mad when the child falls down after its first step? No. It's all about the joy. In fact, the mothers enjoy, oh, made 2 steps this time. Wow, cool, good. It's not about spanking the kid. It's about hugging the kid, and helping it grow and develop. This is how he's changing. He's asking us he's challenging us about what is our image of God. And of course, the response then is, okay, God has been merciful to us. How are we to treat other people? You can't be a Pharisee. You can't be a judge of everybody else if you've already recognized your own sinfulness and your need of mercy. And here, of course, he doesn't even have to do anything but quote Jesus. Because that's what it's all about in the Gospels, is God's mercy towards us and the mercy and love that we should show to one another. Be merciful just as your Father is merciful. Do not judge, and you will not be judged. Do not condemn, and you will not be condemned. Forgive, and you will be forgiven. Give, and it will be given to you. For the measure you give will be the measure you get back. It's our response to God's love for us is to love our brothers and sisters. Our response to God's mercy towards us is to be merciful to all of our brothers and sisters. This is what the gospel message is all about. And of course, Peter, I think it was Peter, comes to say, yeah, but how many times do we have to forgive? 70 times? No, 70 times 7 times 77. It's, we have to constantly forgive, which is tough, which is probably, really, really tough to do, to be forgiving. But that's what God is towards us, and that's why we're called to be forgiving. What's it mean then to be a church of mercy? The church must be a place of mercy, freely given, where everyone can feel welcome, loved, forgiven, and encouraged to live the good life of the gospel. This is a different image of what it means to be a church if we found it on this whole idea of mercy. I don't know what your experience has been, and I don't know what your parish is like, but often, when I'm on vacation, I go to some strange parish, and I go there. I mean, let's face it, Catholic churches are not very welcoming. Come on, I mean, you got, after you've been there for a year, someone might say, oh, who are you? You go to one of those evangelical mega churches, 1 foot's over the, inside the door, and you're tackled by 5 people. Oh, welcome. We're so happy to have you here. Let me show you around. Let me introduce you to some people. No, I mean, we are not welcoming. That's not just a problem with the clergy. It's also a problem with all of us to be a welcoming church. And he's saying, hey, that's part of learning from the gospel of mercy, is to be a welcoming, a loving, forgiving, and encouraging community. Because that's what the church is. It's the community of the disciples of Christ. And that's what we're called to be in this church of mercy. So this is extremely important. And you see how, starting with God's mercy towards us, it has ecclesiological consequences of how we think about being a church. Are we just the place, the gas station we go on Sundays to fill up for the rest of the week? Or are we a community that experiences and encourages and forgives? Such a community has an endless desire to show mercy, the fruit of its own experience of the power of God's infinite mercy. So it's this experience of mercy that then we share with one another. This is who we are supposed to be. Now, what kind of consequences does this have? Well, he says the first thing you should hear from the church is Jesus loves you. He gave his life to save you, and now he's living at your side every day to enlighten, strengthen, and free you. This is the first words anybody should hear when they come to a Catholic church, to a Catholic community. What's it mean to be a Catholic? These should be the words that people hear. This is a community that professes that Jesus loves you. I think that because of the Catholic response to the Reformation and the Protestant Reformation, we put such stress in our catechism on how we're different from Protestants that we forgot and ignored all the things that we have in common with all Christians. And this is the basic message that has to be proclaimed first. That Jesus loves us, he gave his life for us, and now he's living at our side. Enlighten, strengthen, and help us to be free. This is the gospel message that we should be proclaiming to people who want to know what's it mean to be a Catholic. This is what Pope Francis is saying should be the first words that we speak, that catechists speak to people who want to be Christian. But it's not just first in time, it's also the principal message. It's the message that has to be repeated over and over and over again. It's not just, the first words we hear. but it's the proclamation we have to hear time and time again. Again, this is, is this what you hear preached from the pulpit? Is this what you hear when Catholics get together and share the scriptures? Is this what you hear from Catholics in their communities? That this is the message of Jesus. And it's also a freeing message. He has this wonderful quote from Aquinas, and actually who was citing back to Augustine. That God, mercy, has willed that we should be free. There is freedom that comes through God's mercy, God's grace, and that is also who we are about. And the consequences of that are, that the precepts enjoined by the church should not be insisted upon, or should be insisted upon with moderation, so as not to burden the lives of the faithful and make our religion a form of servitude. This is again changing our attitudes towards what it means to be a Catholic, what it means to be a Christian. Does it mean to, all of a sudden get all sorts of rules and regulations about how we should live our lives? Or is it a total orientation of God's love for us that we then share with one another and experience as a community that changes us? And he goes on to say that this warning of Augustine and Aquinas should be taken into account considering the reform of the church and her preaching. I think this is very important. We see this becomes we'll use your word, hermeneutic of deciding what is needed for the reform of the church. It's first of all a change of attitude, a change of culture. This is why he hates clericalism, because clericalism is one of those things where people put themselves up on a platform and say, I'm better than you are, and therefore you have to listen to me and do what I tell you. No, you don't get up on a platform, you say, I am a sinner. I have experienced God's mercy, and that is what we're going to share together as a community. It's a change in the culture of the church, which is the fundamental first thing that is needed in the reform of the church. A change of attitudes, a change of culture. Josh was mentioning that some people keep asking, when's he going to do something? It's all this style and fluff and, being nice. But when's he going to really do something? In my way of thinking, style and symbols are substance in the Catholic Church. Because that's what we're all about. We're a church of symbols. The sacraments are symbols that give place. Symbols matter, culture matters, attitudes matter, and that's what he's trying to change. That would be, you probably all would have been parts of organizations where, you've had reorganizations and changes and, all that, memos come down from on top. And nothing changes. Nothing at all changes. You've got to change the culture of an institution, whether it's a police department, whether it's a university, whether it's a school, whether it's a church. It's the culture that's bred into that institution that is more important in changing that than moving little boxes around on the organizational chart, which does absolutely nothing. And that's what he's trying to do in the symbols and the style that he's adopting, because what he's trying to do is model what it means to be a good bishop, model what it means to be a good priest, model what it means to be a good Christian. And that, if he's successful in that, it will be more important than any other thing that he does. So you can see the whole idea of a church of mercy and how that is going to impact his ideas about reforming the church. This one I love. The confessional must not be a torture chamber, but rather an encounter with the Lord's mercy, which spurs us on to do our best. That's where he does. You should come out smiling from the confessional, because you've experienced the Lord's mercy. I met this young woman who was a producer for CBS. She, typical story, had been grown up a Catholic, went to college, stopped going to Mass, graduated, still didn't go to Mass. And then, got engaged to a boyfriend who was Catholic and who encouraged her, Pope Francis and everything, give it another chance, let's try it. So she started going back to church, and then she decided one day, well, I haven't been to confession in 10 years. I really, that would be nice. Let's go to confession. Well, luckily her boyfriend warned her, well, going to confession, it's kind of like playing Russian roulette. You don't know what you're going to get. Well, she got the bullet. I mean, she went, and this guy chewed her out, the priest chewed her out, told her how bad, such a bad person, hadn't been in confession, everything that had gone wrong in her life was because she hadn't been to confession in 10 years. She came out weeping, and for the whole next day she was in tears. Not because she'd been filled with the Spirit, because this jerk had ruined her experience. Those people should be banned from ministry along with some of the other people. Confessional should not be a torture chamber. I think that's exactly what he's talking about. The arrogance. I mean, that's clericalism at its worst. And I don't know, we got to deal with it. But in any case, it should be an experience of God's mercy. He also even quotes from the Catechism, which points out that our responsibility for an action can be diminished, by ignorance, inadvertence, duress, fear, habit, inordinate attachments, and other psychological or social factors. And understanding that should make us more forgiving of other people. We always know about these things when it's our sins. I always know how I'm not guilty. Because my parents raised me the way they did. It's all their fault. But, we have to have this attitude towards other people and, to be more forgiving. And consequently, he says, without distracting from the ideal, pastors need to accompany with mercy and patience the eventual stages of a personal growth as these progressively occur. This is and I'm going to come back to this a little bit later because this gets to the law of graduality that was mentioned at the Synod. That we're on a pilgrimage. None of us are perfect. Churches are not for the perfect. They certainly the Catholic Church isn't. We're a big tent for everybody. At least that's the way we should be. And if we think of the church as the place for the holiest, then I'm sorry, that just ain't us. A church is a place for all of us who are on pilgrimage, and we're on pilgrimage together, hoping to reach the goal, to be more Christ-like, to reach the kingdom of God eventually. He's not big on people who stress orthodoxy. We should not be concerned simply about falling into doctrinal error, but about remaining faithful to this light-filled path of life and wisdom. It's really about moving forward on the pilgrimage, on the path. He points out defenders of orthodoxy are sometimes accused of passivity, indulgence, or culpable complicity regarding intolerable situations of injustice and the political regimes which prolong them. He's much more interested in orthopraxis and how we practice our religion than what theological concepts we have in terms of how we explain our religion. That's much more important to him, that we live lives of love than know how to define what love is. But this is also, his whole talk about mercy also applies to how he looks on the poor. The church, guided by the gospel of mercy and by love for humankind, hears the cry for justice and intends to respond to it with all her might. Now, actually, he loves to do this. You see where he's quoting the Congregation for Doctrine of the Faith document back in 1984. Somebody must go through these documents finding the best lines and then incorporating them into his documents. But that's what the Church of Mercy means. It's not just us, our nice little community, we love each other, we're nice to each other, we forgive each other. No, we have a mission, as was mentioned in the earlier. A mission to the peripheries, a mission to help, a mission to reach out in justice for the poor. And he has this, he quotes Mark's gospel where Jesus, they come and they say, the people are hungry. And Jesus says, well, feed them. And he picks up on that. What's that mean? When he tells his disciples, you yourselves should give them something to eat. It means working to eliminate the structural causes of poverty and to promote the integral development of the poor, as well as the small daily acts of solidarity in meeting the real needs which we encounter. So it's both this acts of charity, but also working for justice, for changing social structures, for eliminating. It's not just helping the poor, but working to eliminate the causes of poverty. This is all part of being a church of mercy. And he talks about solidarity, which was mentioned earlier. And he talks about it as a mindset. It's a virtue. It's a mindset which thinks in terms of the community and the priority of life of all over the individual, over the appropriation of goods by a few. So a church of mercy is not a church of the 1%, unless they're willing to think about the other 99%. This is what it means to be in solidarity, to not be just concerned about what my taxes are, but who are being helped, who are how what I have can help other people. He also talks about the God first priority and his first mercy is towards the poor. And again, he quotes John Paul II on this one. And the divine preference has consequences for the faith of all Christians, since we are called to put on this line, which is Christ. So if Christ says, blessed are the poor, then that should lead us to the preferential option for the poor, the special form of primacy in the existence of Christian charity, to which the whole tradition of the church bears witness. And again, he's quoting John Paul II here. So it's inspired by Jesus' love for the poor. If we are, if as Christians we are the disciples of Jesus, putting on the mind of Jesus, then the consequences of that is the option for the poor. The Synod on the Family touched on this whole idea of mercy. And that's what I'll conclude with, is a few words about the Synod on the Family. Here, a lot of focus was on the situation of divorced and remarried Catholics, people who are cohabitating, who just never got married, and on gays, gay people. The recognition that there are lots of Catholics out there in these circumstances. And I think, his first experience of that, I think, was again, in the slums of Buenos Aires. I mean, in the slums of Buenos Aires, you got to bet that 90% of the people are not in what would be church-regulated, proper marriages. I mean, there's divorce, there's people living together who never got married, all of this kind of thing. And these are the people he met. These are the people whose homes he sat in. And these are the people he gave communion to. I think this is his experience, because for him, reality, facts, the facts on the ground matter. And this was his complaint both against liberation theologians and also the libertarians, that they had these ideas that they were going to force on the poor. They knew the answer. They knew what was good for the poor, and they were going to impose it. Now, he says the first thing you go do is you go down there and sit in their houses and listen to the poor. You pay attention to them. You don't come in with your academic ideas or your philosophies. You go down there and you meet them. He sometimes, frankly, comes across as anti-intellectual. He says facts are more important than ideas. Can you imagine Benedict ever saying something like that? I mean, a man who spent his whole life in academia, facts are more important. Yeah, I don't think he would even have a clue what that meant. But what it meant for Bergoglio, for Francis, was you gotta go down there and listen to people and see what's really happening, and then think about it. Don't think about it in your academic tower and then come down and tell people, we have the answers to all your problems. This was also one of his criticism of more progressive liberal Jesuits who weren't into processions and Marian devotions and rosary and all that. He said, hey, you want to identify with the poor? That's the spiritual life of the poor. So get with it. Don't poo-hoo it. Don't stand on your ivory tower and look your nose down at people who have devotions to Mary or say the rosary. No. This is the poor. This is who they are. If you're going to be with them, then you have to adopt their spirituality also and not look down on them. So getting into, the facts is really important for him. Now, at the Synod, they kept saying that the problem they were faced with was, how can you be a loving mother and a clear teacher at the same time? And that's probably something that every parent can identify with. And this is what they were constantly talking about. Because I think there were two groups of bishops at the Synod. They're the crazies, the ideologues, the Raybergs, they just simply never going to change. They're never going to get it. They are so ideologically driven that all the facts in the world could never change their minds. Then I would say there are what I would call the pastoral conservatives. These are not great intellectuals. These are people who grew up in conservative families, went to conservative seminaries, were good churchmen, supported the Pope, okay. They're a little confused right now because they've always been told, go that way. And now they're being told, no, let's try going this way. And they are confused. They are really confused. And they don't know quite what to do. Because they're afraid, well, now if we start, embracing all these divorced and remarried Catholics and people cohabitating and gay partners and stuff, well, people are going to think, really doesn't matter. I don't have to get married in the church. Every kind of sexual union is equal. They don't want to go there. On the other hand, they know that being a clear teacher hasn't worked for the last 30 years. Especially when you use words like living in sin and intrinsically disordered. great thing when Josh and I were in the press office, and I had the earphones on for the translation, and there was a bishop up there talking in Italian, and I was getting the translation over my earphones. And the bishop said in Italian, whatever the Italian words are, intrinsically disordered. The translation came across intrinsically messy. I thought that would make a wonderful t-shirt. But anyway, all that kind of language just doesn't, it's alienating, it doesn't work. So they're trying to juggle these things, and they don't know quite how to handle it. One of the things that was pushed was to acknowledge the goodness in what are considered by the church imperfect relationships. I mean, and this is where facts matter. I mean, if you meet a person who's divorced and remarried, they're faithful to one another. They're loving their children and raising them as good Christians. They're contributing to the community. Well, how can you say that these are bad people? And that if they die, they're going to go to hell. It just doesn't make any sense. So, what they were talking about is acknowledging the goodness in these relationships. Even, one bishop got up and talked about gay partners, who nurse, one partner is nursing the other partner who's dying of AIDS. If they were as selfish as, we used to say, they'd be out the door as soon as the person got sick, instead of caring for that person with love and tenderness, and self-sacrifice. Well, how can you say that these people are, so evil? So it's acknowledging the goodness in these relationships, even if they're not perfect. And this gets us to the law of graduality. This developed after the after Humanae Vitae. When people started going to confession and saying, okay, I accept the church's teaching, but I can't do it. And so, what's this mean? Am I committing a sin every time I do something? Can I go to communion? And confessors developed this kind of law of graduality, which encouraged the laity to understand that gradually they would make the law a reality in their lives, and that in the meantime, the sacraments could accompany them along this journey. This actually was mentioned favorably by John Paul II and some other rather conservative cardinals and theologians. But I'm afraid our bishops weren't up on their theology, and so this scared the hell out of them for some reason. And of course, it's not as liberal an idea as progressives think or as conservatives think. It's actually a pretty traditional idea. The more liberal idea would be simply say, hey, you're not committing a sin if you practice birth control. So you don't need to go to confession. If you make that judgment in good conscience, etc. So what we found, I think, at the Synod was that just as at Vatican II, there is a need for more education for the bishops. Vatican II was a continuing education program for bishops. And it took them 4 years to raise their level of education so they could accept the documents of Vatican II. That's why this process of the Synod, I think, is important. I'm going to just skip through this stuff because I'm over time. But the process is ongoing. It's going to continue, and I think this is the opportunity for the bishops to learn more and to, talk to people and recognize these things and become more sensitive to them. So, in conclusion, what does it mean to become a church of mercy? It's accepting God's mercy towards us, being merciful to one another, being a church living and preaching the gospel of God's love and mercy, and being merciful and compassionate towards the poor. Thank you.